Happy Wine Wednesday.
Happy
Jenny.
Wine Wednesday, everyone. How's your week going, Michelle?
It's going great so far. Been very busy, but that's how I like it.
I know. I feel like it's Wednesday, but it feels like Monday. So thank God for wine.
Yeah, I was talking to someone earlier, and I was like, I really feel like today's Friday. Like, that's how like this week has been so far.
But we're like a walking meme right now. Amazing. Well, we are very excited to be here with you guys this week. Our topic today is very timely. We're talking about student loans and what that means for you as a borrower and the economy overall. So our financial maven, Michelle, is going to kind of help us navigate through the landscape and what's been going on, because as I'm sure you're aware, lots of updates in that category. So before we dive into that, I want to talk about our wine for the day. I have like some bittersweet feelings towards this right now, because unfortunately, the bottle that I chose, not the actual wine itself, but just the bottle that I chose, is flawed. So I can't drink it with you guys. For those of you who don't know what flawed is, it's essentially, for lack of better terminology, like a lemon. Like you buy something and unfortunately that one isn't good, right? So there's lots of different wine flaws, and there's a whole study around how to identify and the different types. This one's oxidative, so I will not be drinking with you guys. I know it looks like I have been. I poured my husband and myself a glass and we took a sip and we were like, whoo, we're funneling that back in. If that ever happens to you guys, you can take it back. It does happen every once in a while, but just something for you to know. But I will not bother you guys with that anymore. I'm going to talk to you about the wine, which is actually really good if you don't have a flawed bottle. We are drinking a Tavel Rosé today. And what's unique about Tavel, which is a region in the Rhone Valley in France, is that it is one of the regions that only does rosé. So that's kind of a rarity, and it's really fun. What I also like about it is this specific region. Rosé is something that is meant to be drank very young. That's why the vintages are always going to be like 21 or 2020 or 2022 moving forward. There's always a bum rush for rosé in the beginning of the season because you want to drink it as young and as vibrant as you can. Generally speaking, you want to drink most wines young, contrary to popular belief, but rosé is really an outlier in that regard. And what I love about this one is you can let it age a little bit if you want to. And it's obviously got this very rich color, as you can see. So there's more skin contact on this one than your typical Provençal style rosé, which is my preference because it gives it more personality in my experience. So love this one. Definitely you're going to get some notes of some strawberry, a little bit of spice, a little bit of salinity, a lot more personality than all, and are enjoying it. And I'm going to have to take this one back and buy another one.
Oh no.
I know. Sad face. But anyways, moving into our rose and our thorn for the week. Michelle, why don't you tell us about your rose and your thorn?
Yes. So let's start with my thorn. So if anybody is in, I guess, like the tri-state area or the Northeast, it has been raining. So today, I think, is actually the last day of like cloudiness and rain for the past maybe 2 weeks. And it has, Yay. So finally some sun, because I'm looking very pale to get out and get my tan on. It's almost the middle of summer and I feel like still very pale. But it has been just like a downpouring, and I've got stuck in it maybe like 3 times. And it's not fun walking in the New York City streets with, the heat, the mugginess, and then this torrential downpouring on you. So that was my thorn.
Oh man.
But
we need some of the rain down here. So you can just go ahead and send it down here.
I'll send it to you guys, but it actually has helped with the humidity. So today's actually not that bad. It's only like high 70s, which is nice.
Well, good. I'm glad you're going to get a little bit of a reprieve.
Yes, me too. Can't wait. Okay. And then my rose. So I love a good like dirty water dog in New York City. And
love.
Yes. So it's actually funny. So a lot of times, not so much anymore, but when I was younger, I would like go out and I could eat maybe like 3 or 4. Like on a night, but to myself. But this weekend, we were actually going out in New York City. We went to a few different bars, and we actually found one that gives out free hot dogs when you buy a drink. And I was like, this is awesome, especially, during these times with everything that's going on with the economy. You could hardly get anything for free. And we just hopped on a bar where they're giving out free hot dogs. I was like, yes, let's stay here all night. But unfortunately, they only took cash. We didn't have cash, so we had to go back next weekend.
I love it. I told Michelle, so you guys, I'm going to visit Michelle in New York City later this year. And my husband's obsessed with hot dogs. So I told her that she had to keep that a secret from him so that we don't end up being there every night.
Yes. So just tell him to close his ears if you didn't watch his podcast.
I know, right? He can't listen to this one. I'll tell him it's not pertinent to him.
Yes. What about you? What are your rose and thorn of the week?
So I'll start with my thorn because you always want to end on a good note. My thorn is one of our properties, one of our Airbnbs in Galveston seems to have been having a little bit of a cascading, I guess, Murphy's Law, if you will. Lots going wrong. So obviously Galveston Island is extremely humid and hot. So we've had some issues with the humidity and the moisture. And we had mold on the ceiling and we were trying to figure out what caused it. And there was a leak in the ductwork and we had to take the cabinets off the wall and we had to get rid of the mold and remediate that and then fix the ductwork and then re-put up the drywall. All this to say, it was kind of a nightmare from a real estate perspective this week, but luckily we got everything addressed. All of it was solvable. And I think the contractors are currently finishing up right now in time for our next guest. So not too many complaints, but it's definitely one of those, was not expecting that cost or inconvenience. So that sucked. But my rose was my sister. My sister's birthday was over the weekend, and we went to a new steakhouse in Austin that I hadn't been to before. And it was really, really good. Everything was executed well. Great wine, great appetizers. Everybody was happy. We had the best time. So love finding new restaurants in Austin.
Sounds so fun. Happy birthday to your sister.
I'll tell her. She's definitely living her cancer dream of her birthday month.
Awesome. Okay. So let's go into now my favorite part of the week, the quote of the week.
Yes.
And it's actually, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say we'd be remiss if we didn't have an opportunity to hear from our quote queen.
Exactly. So this quote this week is actually from Jenny herself. And I was reading her wine description and I immediately texted her and said, I love this line. I'm using it. But it was like, unlike most, this remarkable rosé has the rare ability to age and improve over time. And I loved it. And I was like, you know what? I want that said about me too. And I was like,
I know we wax poetic so much about wine, and it's like, man, what if someone said that about me?
Right, exactly. So I loved it. I was like, okay, this is our quote of the week. Enjoyed that.
Oh my God, I love it. We're all roses in our own right, you guys. Anyways, all right, Michelle. Well, I personally am very excited about this topic. It definitely pertains to me in a lot of ways. I took out a lot of student loans when I was going to undergrad and law school. Much like the rest of the nation, I'm sure this affects so many people, specifically millennials, in my opinion. So a lot has been going on with regard to student loans since the great pause back in 2019 before COVID, or back in 2020, I guess you would say. Yeah. So I am super, super excited to learn from you. And I put some questions that I personally have selfishly together. And I think that you kind of walking through it will be really helpful for our listeners and anybody who would be affected by this. So I'm going to dive right in. Can you tell us a little bit about the previous student debt forgiveness plan that was proposed last year during all of this kind of political turmoil when things were kind of coming to a head?
Right. So the student debt forgiveness plan, that was a major campaign effort for President Biden. And when he was campaigning for presidency, it's a big thing he was promising. He was going to get all the student loan debt forgiven for all Americans. And then in August 2022, like I said, right. Well, actually, kind of towards the end of COVID, things were starting to ease up a little bit with the student loan, pauses. Everything was kind of up in the air. What's going to happen? So the Biden administration proposed a student loan forgiveness plan. Just kind of want to go over it quickly, if anybody forgot, but it was supposed to cancel up to $20,000 in student loan debt per borrower. And so many Americans, everybody was so excited for this, thinking, wow, that's a lot of money that, will be forgiven. They've had all of the student loan debt, paying these high amounts per month. And they were hopeful. They were like, you know what, this is going to be gone. That's great. And according to the White House, it actually said that this would alleviate all student loan debt for around 20 million borrowers.
Wow.
And yeah, that's a lot. And then actually out of the 45 million total borrowers in all of America, 43 million would receive at least some sort of loan forgiveness. So the two types of loans that were going to be forgiven, and this is all federal, so this isn't talking about your private student loans. But it was going to be, $20,000 for all Pell Grants, and then up to $10,000 for all non-Pell Grant borrowers. And to qualify for that forgiveness, as an individual, your income had to be under $125,000, and as a family, your income had to be under $250,000. So it was, a big, like I said, campaign effort for Biden. Americans have 1.6 billion in student loan debt. That's one of our largest debts. Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like, obviously from what you're describing, this effort got a lot of traction initially and definitely captured a lot of attention. It's such a broad audience that it speaks to, right? Can you briefly tell us that for the audience, kind of what is the distinction between a Pell Grant and a non-Pell Grant? Or how would someone know if they have that?
Right. So a Pell Grant is going to be someone that falls under the poverty income limit, people that are having a hard time with income and qualify for that. Or if their families do not make a lot of income, they will qualify for a Pell Grant. So it's really for those who are really in need and need that money to attend college. So that's really the difference between, a Pell Grant and then a regular non-Pell Grant.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. So then why, with so many impacted people from this legislation or this proposed legislation, if you will, why was this attempt by the Biden administration canceled?
Right. So there were actually two separate lawsuits that were brought forward to stop the administration's plan. The first one, it was the Department of Education versus Brown. This actually originated in Texas, where two student loan borrowers who actually already paid the full amount of their student loans back, they claimed that the plan would not allow them to receive any forgiveness. So they went and sued the Department of State. And the next one was Nebraska versus Biden, where there's actually six states that claim that the plan would allow them to lose out on tax revenue for their state. So these two cases were actually brought in front of the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court they struck down Biden's forgiveness plan. And that just happened recently on June 30th of this year. And the argument behind those lawsuits has to do with the HEROES Act. So Biden proposed that the HEROES Act allowed him to cancel the student loan debt, where in reality, the HEROES Act actually only states that the Secretary of Education can modify or waive student loans, but there's no verbiage in there that says that they cancel or wipe out completely. So the Supreme Court agreed with that argument, saying that the president does not have that power to cancel the student loan debt out.
Got it. So the language was just too strong. It was overbroad, and it just wasn't niche enough to actually have an impact per the legislation. Right. Okay. So what's next, right? What are the new student debt proposal guidelines that have come out in light of this? I know it was just handed down from the Supreme Court, but kind of what are we looking at moving forward?
Right. So actually, the Biden administration spoke out a few days after that, and they said they thought that, Congress and the Supreme Court made the wrong decision. They still want to help Americans in this debt crisis that America is in. So there's actually a few guidelines and new details that came out that will affect all of student loan borrowers in America. So, the student loan pause has ended. So now, beginning on September 1st, interest will start accruing again. And then federal student loan payments will begin again on October 1st of this year. It's two majors because, as we all know, over the past 3 years with COVID, those repayments have been in pause and they kept getting extended. So right now, in America, we can't say that COVID is an emergency anymore. So they can't really have proof that that is going to help with the student loan debt being on pause. Right. That's why we're going back into this repayment schedule. But the administration also came out with some new guidelines, and there's 4 of them that I think that are super important and everyone should know. So number 1 is there's a new repayment program. It's called SAVE. So it's basically saving on a valuable education. And this will be a new income-driven repayment plan that will actually reduce the payments in half. So previously, if you had an income payment-driven plan, then you would be capped out at 10% of your monthly income. Now that's actually being reduced to you will be capped at 5% of your monthly income when you have one of these repayment plans. Number 2 is that the income exemption has actually increased from 150% to 225% of the poverty line. So this will now allow probably a lot more Americans to not have to owe anything or have a zero payment. And the guidelines for that is that if you are a single earner, you have to make $32,500 or less, or a family of 4 has to earn $67,500 or less to qualify for that. And if you do have a $0 payment, this will not affect the default payments. It will not put you in default, or it will also not be brought to any credit agency saying that you are not paying back your loan.
Wow.
The third, actually, big detail I think that came out is that interest will actually not accrue now for those making monthly payments. And this is a big deal, just because, as many of you are aware, your interest accrues, and actually now your balance is probably actually more than the original loan that you took out. And the reason for this is that when you submit that payment, most of it is not going to the actual debt. A lot of it's going to the interest that has accrued. So this will allow that your loan balance is not going to grow, and the payment will go straight to decreasing that debt first.
Wow.
Then, yeah, that's a big one there. And then number 4 is that in the first 12 months after this plan rolls out, if you don't make a payment, you will not be reported to the credit bureaus. It's another big thing. So that's not going to affect your payment. They want to, ease Americans back into this. We haven't paid on our federal loans for the past 3 years. We have to get back into a routine. A lot's going to change in a lot of people's households. I'll explain a little bit more about how this may affect some of you. This is a big thing, and they don't want to overwhelm us, and they're going to ease into it slowly.
Okay, I have 2 follow-up questions for you.
Yeah.
This is fascinating information to me. Thank you for being so thorough here. So these 4 components that have been rolled out, are they propositions, or are they in effect?
Okay. So the SAVE program will go in effect in July of 2024. That's actually not in effect yet. So a lot of people, that's actually a really good question, Jenny, because a lot of people are saying, listen, this got stopped already. How do we know that this is going to be rolled out? But in the verbiage that they used here, the Secretary of Education, he's modifying the student loan debt. They're not looking to cancel anything. So it's just modifications. So that's why people firmly believe that this will roll out then. And then, like I said, beginning in, September 1st, we're going to see your interest start accruing again. October 1st, those payments are going to start resuming.
Got it. So the interest rates are still not going to be impacted until next year.
Right. But if you are making student loan payments, your interest will not accrue.
So doesn't that effectively eradicate the interest rate? That's great.
Yeah. So, yeah.
That's amazing. Obviously that's not what we were all hoping for folks that wanted this relief, but that's still, that's my complaint as a borrower, that my balance did increase over time because I wasn't paying towards principal, because most people do income-driven repayment plans. And at that point, you're just kind of spinning the wheels on the principal and just paying the interest off. So that's a really, really amazing program that you pointed out with regard to that.
Right.
So on a larger scale, what does this legislation, proposed or otherwise, I guess the canceled portion, then the new proposition, what does it mean for individuals who have borrowed money in America?
Right. So I think the biggest thing right now for those who have these federal loans, private loans, they still had to be repaid during COVID, so that didn't stop. But federal loans, many Americans got a break from paying these, and that just meant that their budgets and their financial goals were totally different. So that meant they were using these loan payments to go towards things like buying a home, building up their emergency savings funds, investing, saving more into their retirement plans. So now Americans are going to have to kind of take a step back and reanalyze all their financial goals and then also their budgets. So it's going to be, totally different. And then actually also a good point that I heard the other day was graduates from 2019 to 2022 have actually never made a student loan payment on their federal loans since they graduated college. So it's going to be a lot more difficult, for them now going into that.
I feel like it's also it's a psychology shift too, right? The pause started so long ago. Like you mentioned, all of us have kind of gotten used to, income creep, inflation, you name it. There's so many other categories that have kind of made up this expense, but to have never have even factored it in, that is going to be so difficult for them.
It is. And the Consumer Protection actually put out a survey, and 1 in 5 borrowers they predict may struggle in paying back these loans. And kind of like you were saying, this state of America now and the economy, we have to deal with inflation. A lot of people lost their jobs, might have taken pay cuts, are spending now more on things, grocery wise or even bills. A lot of things have gone up. So it's going to be totally different. I think everybody has to kind of take a step back and now just analyze what they will do moving forward.
Yeah. So I know you touched on that just a little bit there. I want to dig deeper into that. What do you think that this means on a larger scale, this proposed legislation, and going back to resuming these payments for the economy as a whole?
Right. There's a lot of factors that I think that are going to be affected. Number one, consumer spending. Now, people have another payment to make, so they're going to be cutting back on costs. They're going to be spending less money out. So that means less goods purchased. I think really the retail, housing, auto, small business, entertainment industries are really going to probably see a hit here with people just cutting back. I know, federal loans, a lot of those payments are high. And when now people having to go and pay them back, that's going to be a big cut that they're taking back. Second, I think the housing market, like I was saying before, with the pause, people were able to go out, maybe buy their first home. I think now putting that repayment into place, there's going to be a lower demand for housing. People aren't going to be, some people, I should say, aren't going to be looking to make a big home purchase. Yeah. I think that there may be a decrease in entrepreneurship since people are going to start looking for more stable jobs now. Now they have bigger expenses every month with this loan payment coming back. They need something stable in income. I also think, the economic growth overall Now with student debt coming back, that may delay life events, that cost money, like buying a house and growing a family, getting married. So I think that will affect overall how the economic growth. Also default risk, if now these payments are coming back, borrowers still can't pay, their loans are going to go into default. I also think government spending, higher loan defaults can require the increased government spending to cover those losses.
Right.
And actually, I saw on the news this morning, I was watching, and the 3 states with the highest amount of student loan borrowers are actually Texas, California, and Florida.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
So we should be definitely on the lookout for some of these adverse effects in those states. And I think that it's kind of a culmination of things, because I feel as though we're kind of feeling a little bit of this already with inflation and the way that the economy is trending. And I feel like this is going to exacerbate that problem. And this is one of those situations where it's just the more you know, right? Like, definitely make sure that you're doing your due diligence to become aware of these shifts that are going to be taking place and what's expected of you. And I think, Michelle, since you're such a wealth of knowledge on this, I'm curious to get your insight. What should consumers do, right? Like, what should we be doing now to prepare for this? And how do we contend with this if we're kind of starting at ground zero? Specifically, I'm thinking of those folks who have never even made a payment, right?
Right. So I know this may bring about, some anxiety and uneasiness to people, but don't become anxious, just go in with the plan. And like Jenny was saying, educate yourself, do the research, look into other people that can give you some knowledge about student loans and how you can repay them. So I think the first step of what you should do, kind of also now, like Jenny was saying, it's been 3 years now. So we have to refamiliarize ourselves with the kind of system, what student loans we have, things like that. So I would definitely log into your servicing account. Or if you don't know who your servicer is or forgot, you can log on to studentaid.gov. And I'll put that website in the chat so you'll have it. But log into studentaid.gov and you'll be able to see the amount that you have and then also the servicer and the details of that loan. And just go in and familiarize yourself, get the total amount that it is going to be each month. And also remember to make sure, if you were on an automatic payment plan, remember to just update that and just make sure the checking account on file is up to date. You don't want October to come around and then you have a different account on file. Just make sure you update that. And then another thing is that if you feel that you are going to have difficulty paying these loans, I would call your loan servicing company like ASAP. A lot of the times, if you talk with them, they will come up with a plan for you to pay back these loans. Also, with the SAVE plan, I would definitely call and talk to them about that to see if you qualify for that income-driven repayment plan, and then also how you could apply for that. And next, create a new household budget. So I know we talked about that a few weeks ago. So you could go back, watch that episode and get a few pointers, but I would definitely look at your budget, add in now that new expense, and just make sure that you have enough income coming in for your expenses and see where you have to cut back if you do at all. And then also you want to reanalyze those financial goals. So like I was saying, before people were taking that money and putting it towards other goals. Maybe you were investing. Maybe you were building your emergency savings fund. Now, with your new budget, you want to go back and look at, do those goals still align with your budget in place?
Yeah.
And a lot of times people will ask, should we pay more towards our student loans or should we invest that money? I always think you should use an amortization calculator to see if it makes sense to put more money towards that loan and pay off the loan quicker. Let me just give you an example. So if you have a low interest rate on your loan, say like 6% or lower, and you want to know if you should make an extra payment or invest that, may make more sense to invest that money into the S&P or the market where you could earn, say, like 7 to 9%, because then you're getting that extra 2% of compound interest over time.
Yeah. And I think too, to piggyback off of your point, if I may, one thing that was made pretty clear to me whenever I first, started getting on a payment schedule for these loans, I am fortunate enough to have a lower interest rate. And one of the things that a lot of people will talk about is debt consolidation, right? Like, should I essentially consolidate this debt so that I can pay it off quicker for a better interest rate? Should I do that? And the answer to that in most cases is yes. But if you have a federal student loan, unless you have a horrible interest rate, I would advise against that, because there is a lot of reform that is taking place in this space, and who knows what's going to happen. And if you refinance and consolidate, you wouldn't be eligible for that reform that's coming down the pike. So you never want to count yourself out of something that could happen, in this space. So make sure you're keeping that in mind if you have a reasonable interest rate. And then also, to Michelle's point earlier, I really want to reiterate, a lot can happen in 3 years, you guys. If you have a different income than you did when you originally got on an income-driven repayment plan, make sure that you're revisiting that. I know the economy is not in the best spot right now. So if you've taken a pay cut, you've got to reach out to your provider and make sure that you have a manageable repayment plan.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for doing all of the research for us so that we don't have to. I feel like you have given us an arsenal of things, just weaponized us with knowledge so that we can attack this, because it's obviously coming into effect much sooner than we all thought. So here we are.
Want everybody to be prepared. And if any other new updates come up, we'll definitely talk about it, in any updates, and let you guys know.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We will be back next week with another fun wine and another fun topic. We're super excited to chat with you guys.
Yes. Have a good week, everyone.